I didn't know it, but while I was in the jungle, I was dropped from the government service. I learned that when I got back to Rabul, I had been 2 months on this jungle mission to teach the Stone Age people control and obedience, adjustment and servitude to a modern civilization. While I was gone, I thought from time to time of Mara and wondered whether I would see her again. I found the answer to that at Rabul. While I was away, one of the earliest airplanes to reach New Guinea arrived, a German junker plane. Mara took the first flight in it. The plane took off, went about 50 yards or more into the air, tried to make a turn, and smacked into a cliff. That was the end of Mara, a vision before my eyes, an image in my heart, far too beautiful, far too young. There was a wonderful saloon in Rabul operated by a Chinaman named Asims, who was simply called Sims. It was a big square wooden structure topped by a red roof that you could see for miles. You entered a whitewashed hall and walked to the end of it, where you reached the nerve center, the bar. About the long board was everything that the world could yield up: miners, recruiters, conmen, thieves, beachcombers, prospectors, planters. There were cubicles at the sides of the room, cubicles upstairs, and 2 or 3 phonographs blared music from various points. At the tables, men played cards, laughed, and fought drunkenly. As I headed for this joint, I wondered how I could get to the gold fields, still my principal aim, but that took a stake, and I didn't have much. Sims, glad to see me, promptly introduced me to a red-headed fellow with bushy eyebrows named Al Tavisher. He and Tavisher had a joint interest in a plantation on a not too distant island called New Ireland, part of the New Guinea territory. Tavisher was one of those Australians to profit by the expiration of the German properties. Tavisher was one of those Australians to profit by the expropriation of the German properties. With a small amount of money, some credit, and a large debt owing to the government, he was ready to produce copra. Sims told his partner I was looking for a job. Actually, I was trained for absolutely nothing, nothing whatsoever. I hadn't even learned how to hold a glass of beer in my hand, had read many books which hadn't prepared me for anything practical, but I had the gift of the gab, or blarney, and could either talk my way in or out of a situation, or, if necessary, fight my way in or out. "What do you know about the copra?" he asked, as we leaned on the bar. What do I know about copra? Only everything. I've been raised on copra, spent all my life around copra. I jabbered like a hen at early morning rising, how there was nothing about running a plantation that I didn't know. I could handle men, keep books. As for my job with the government, hell, I had left that, resigned. I wouldn't put up with the way the government brutalized the natives back there. I hoped he didn't know I'd been fired. That line struck a chord with him, and he began telling me about the plantation he and Sims owned in Caving, New Ireland. Would I like to go there and run it? Would 40 pounds a month be all right? Would it? I grabbed his hand, shook it, told him he had the best plantation operator he could find in all New Guinea. I would do him a favor and take the post, even though it was a long ways distant from this fine saloon. I immediately beat it to the library to see what I could find out about running a coconut plantation. I learned absolutely nothing, only how to crack open a coconut. What I really wondered about was, how do you handle 120 indentured laborers, the workforce employed by my fellow Australian? Desperate for any bit of information on what I could expect in the face of so new and large a situation, I sought out a friend named Basil Hoare, a young Englishman with a first-rate record in World War I as a naval commander. He had come from England, and he ran a schooner. To him, I stated the problem. What the hell do you do, Basil, with a force of ex-cannibals? Where do you begin? He was used to working with native labor. Easy, old boy, nothing to it. Very British manner. You just get a hold of the boss boy. What's that? On every plantation, there's a boss boy. You call for him and just say to him, Boss boy, carry on. Basil explained that the boss boy knew more about copra than he or I would ever know. Really, it's easy, old fellow. Just give the boss boy the impression you know more than he does, and the plantation will run like a clock. I took ship for New Ireland and arrived in Caving, a town in which the coconut palm is used in scores of ways. Palm-covered houses, hats, and caps modeled of braided coconut leaf, furniture of the palm stalk, everything touched by copra. The population was picturesque. Most were Malaysian. There were many Chinese, and only a few were white. From there, I made a one-day journey to the plantation called Matinalawa. The whole region was like most coconut islands, low, flat land lying close to the sea, the sunlight intense. I occupied a little bungalow near the water and was delighted to find there a shelf full of middle-lead books. The Germans who had lived here had left some books in German, French, and English. Included were a couple of French and German dictionaries. While it was a hard way to learn a new language, I could have mental exercise, try to improve myself while away lonely hours. I called for the boss boy. I told him I wanted to inspect the whole labor force. He explained to me that the labor supply had been recruited from two tribes who were hereditary enemies, and he hoped they would get along all right. The natives ambled in close to the bungle from all directions of the plantations. Their brown bodies sweated and shone in the hot daylight. I looked over their lean muscularity. Their muscles rippled with the look that the human animal has wherever men live all their days and nights out of doors. Most were as naked as Adam, except for the cloth binding about the head and a twist of cloth or leaf around the loins. I stood before them, dressed in white, still wearing the white helmet of a government man. I was the only white man within 50 miles. I asked the boss boy a few questions and continued to survey them. Then, taking a deep breath, I tried the magic sesame words. All right, boss boy, carry on. The boss boy called out orders in native, directing them to return to work. They marched off in every direction. I wondered what it was all about. All I knew, I was growing coconuts. I turned my attention to things I understood better. Close by, I heard the roar of the surf. There was reef out there, and sharks would just be beyond the reef. The beach looked beautiful. There was always more to learn about water. I made pals with a playful little dog, and we went swimming while the coconuts grew. Each morning that scene was repeated. The laborers gathered around my bungalow, with the boss boy standing next to me. He carried a stick to use in case anybody got out of hand. I would boom, "All right, boss boy, carry on." Week by week, day by day, the coconut trees grew nuts. During the succeeding time, it appeared to me as if everything prospered. It was wonderful to see the long rows of young palms as they came up. Fowl and pigs were thriving. I even had a good young mare to mount and ride about, lording it over the Kanakas and making it look like I was working and running things. If I hadn't been so stupid, I would have had some fear about the environment, about the men that worked for me. One evening, word was brought to me that the beriberi had broken out among them. I went to the barracks area where they lived in palm huts and, for the first time, saw how they lived. I couldn't do much about the berry. There weren't enough vitamins in their diet. At the time, vitamins were unknown, but I knew it was inadequate food. I did notice many cut and wounded men going about. They had been fighting each other. That was how they passed the time at night, these tribal enemies in individual and group fights, using knives. Now I understood why I had been hearing those noisy demonstrations from their ranks. These were iodine days, and I brought iodine to them and dressed the wounds of the hurt natives. There were no bandages available, just iodine. Some permanganate of potash, a few jars of ointment, and I did the best I could as a medicine man. Thereafter, when I heard them brawling, I went down among them, bravely stupid. I might have caught a spear or a knife and hollered at them not to fight. They fought anyway as I looked on, and I would wind up with my iodine ritual. But they knew how to take care of coconut soil and coconut trees, and I was learning about copra, as coconut cultivation was called. Time passed. Carry on, boss boy. Time while I swam, studied German and French, pored over the damp books, looked out at the sea. I was alone, but not exactly lonely. I was only 18, and there was too much living I was doing to be lonely. There was monotony, but I had long since learned to be by myself. I didn't like it, but there it was. I dreamed of Mora, dashed to her death in the plain, and looked in my books at the pictures of beautiful white girls.